Thank you very much, Maggie, for the nice introduction. And this is a joy to be here. I want to recognize Bishop Leo, who's such a gift to the church, gift to all of us. And of course, the Clark family. Thank you, Jimmy and Annie, and Kathy, and Annie's here, and of course Maggie. And I'm very privileged to represent the Papal Foundation on this occasion. Some of you may not know of the Papal Foundation in the United States. It was founded in 1989 and works in close cooperation with the Holy See, with the Holy Father. It was initially founded by the Friends of John Paul the Great, by a cardinal named Cardinal Kroll, who was a Polish cardinal in America, Polish by birth, and wanted to support the Holy Father and take some of the wealth of the United States and set up a foundation that could fund special projects of the Holy See. And that's how it began in 1989. Over the course of its history, it's given out nearly $250 million in grants. This last year, the Papal Foundation supported 150 different projects throughout the world in the amount of about $20 million. And this project is one of those grants that helps support this construction, this new initiative, what Maggie described as fountain of living waters. It's going to flow through the church and revitalize it and help it grow here in Ireland. I'm also proud to stand here as an American, and I say that because, and I thank you for being patient with my American accent as I speak my English here. My grandfather was born and lived in Ballahadreen in Roscommon, and my father was raised in Minnesota. And I went back to Roscommon and went to Ballahadreen and actually saw the Towey feed store that's still there on a corner right across from the Cathedral of the Annunciation in St. Nathy. And so to come back to Ireland is always sentimental for me because of my ancestry. And it's also sentimental because America is indebted to Ireland for the missionaries who helped establish the Catholic Church in our country. Nearly 2 million Irish immigrated to America during the mid to late 1800s. And it was amazing to see what would happen in a short period of time. And by the 20th century, more than 4,000 Irish-born priests were serving in the United States. Many of them in different dioceses. In the Archdiocese of New York, where they often entered at Ellis Island, almost all of them did. 3 out of 5 priests were from Ireland. 3 out of 5 priests were from Ireland in this great archdiocese. And by 1950, 80% of the priests of Los Angeles on the other coast, 80% were Irish-born. In my home state of Florida, where I grew up, by the time I was 12 years old, 2/3 of the priests of that diocese, in the Diocese of St. Augustine, 2/3 of the priests of that diocese had come from Ireland. My parents divorced, and I was raised by my mother. Although my father lived as an adult, I got to know him much better, and he actually died from the city where Mary and I were living and raising our 5 children. But my mom raised us, and in our home we had Irish priests. When I think of the father figures in my life, I think of Father Cody and Father Gordon and Father McMahon and Father Kaloran, Father Danaher, Father Logan. I can go down the list of all these Irish men born in this great country that came to the United States and helped build the church there. And when you look, of course, at the history of the Catholic Church in the United States, and you think of some of the great men that came and gave their lives for the American people. You think of Cardinal Spellman in New York. You think of Cardinal Cushing, who was in Boston, and Cardinal Doherty from Philadelphia, and Cardinal Fian in Chicago, the great cities in America. All of them had these Irish-born prelates. And it's amazing how these men helped oversee the growth of church, not only in their own archdiocese, but throughout the country. As I said, the debt that America has to this country and to those who came as missionaries is impossible to repay. And we continue to rely heavily on Irish priests, both those that were born in this country, and about 1,250, I think, was the last count, and then the thousands more, like me, of Irish descent. I'm not a priest, wasn't lucky enough, but I'm grateful for these influences in my life and the gift this country has been to the United States. And the Papal Foundation, in recognition of this, decided to fund this project, to be part of a renewal, of a rebirth in this country of the faith. It's obvious that when you hear Maggie's words and you picture so much of what took place in this abbey and what's going to take place in the future, you see so much of the passion of Christ and the resurrection of Christ. And so it's fitting that funds from America are now going to be placed in the service of this church here. It's now my privilege to introduce Anne, Kathy Clark, who I think all of you know. And rather than use my own words, I'm going to quote from a letter which His Eminence Sean Cardinal O'Malley, another great Irishman who's the Archbishop of Boston and a cardinal, one of the ones closest to Pope Francis. I will use his words. By the way, Cardinal O'Malley, next Saturday, turns 80, which is the mandatory retirement age for a bishop in the church. Of course, in America, when he turns 80, he can run for president and be part of a youth movement. But I use Cardinal O'Malley's words as the beginning of an introduction of this woman that we know. He said, quote, "Light is beginning to dawn in the land of St. Patrick as a new movement in Ireland is revitalizing the church. Headquartered in County Cavan, the Apostolate of the Returning King is helping rebuild the church and restore trust in its leadership. ARC's parish-based programs, particularly focused on Irish youth, present the church in an accurate, attractive, and appropriate way." Bishop Cardinal O'Malley goes on, "The foundress of ARC, Kathy Clark, who writes under the pseudonym of Anne, is a mother of 6 children and lives in Cavan. She's been entrusted with a vision for a soul sanctuary, for renewal of the church in Ireland and abroad. 20 years ago, she received spiritual messages that foretold the coming storms in the church, and these mystical experiences led her to undertake a project described, as you now know, and now underway here, that is hoping to repair the breach in Ireland and promote a deeper embrace of the Catholic faith. And this result is what we are here to gather today to celebrate, this International Center for Human and Spiritual Formation that's underway." As Maggie mentioned in her allusion to Mother Teresa of Calcutta, the saint that I had the privilege to work for the last 12 years of her life and had the privilege to do the first reading at her Mass of canonization, I'm reminded of her life too. This little woman, this follower of Jesus, she was deeply indebted to Ireland. It's impossible to describe. She always said that Ireland would keep a very special place in her heart, because at age 18, when she left to be a missionary of the Sisters of Loretto and went to Rathfarnham to study English, her first words of English were taught to her there in Rathfarnham. Mother was then studying as a novice under the tutelage of Irish women. These Irish women that were her superiors, her novice mistress, and of course the superior general. And as she arrived in Calcutta and began her studies as a young girl, she had this great formation, this cultural influence of the greatness of Ireland through these women that taught it and instructed her in the religious life and really began to prepare her for her life's journey that we know all about. So she remained in debt to these Irish nuns, and in fact, when she named her first 2 followers that she named one after the superior general, the Irish sister, Sister Gertrude, that was in Dublin, and she named the other after her superior there in the Loreto convent, Sister Dorothy. So Mother was very indebted to these Irish women, and she never forgot Ireland, came here many times. When she opened the home in 1982 in Dublin, she then opened other homes in Blarney, in Sligo, in Armagh. Hope I'm pronouncing these correctly. And she also opened a home in 1971 in Belfast, although interestingly enough, she was asked to leave that home in 1972, but she tried. But she was in Belfast for that period. She came to Knock in 1993. 50,000 Catholics came to be there with her that day. Great celebration. She came back to Dublin in 1995. Was in a wheelchair, sprained her ankle. She loved and gave until it hurt, and never forgot her connection. But when she was interviewed in Dublin in 1982, when she first came, she was asked, "Why did you come?" And she said, "Poverty is different in every country, and we do not compare. We just come and serve, and slowly, one at a time, we try to bring the joy of loving and being loved, because that's what we all have been created for." I thought of those words of Mother when she came to Dublin in 1982 when I think of what is happening here today and what's hoped for here today. That that the youth of this country, that others along the aging process can rediscover and reclaim the greatness of their Catholic faith in this rich tradition. It's impossible to be at a groundbreaking and not think of the scriptural account of Good Friday, when Jesus hung on the cross for you and me, for love of us. And Scripture recounts how there was an earthquake and the ground broke there. And that little mustard seed of his blood was planted in the earth. And from this came the church that we claim as our home, as our mother. And today, another mustard seed's being planted in the ground here in Ireland through a humble servant who I'm privileged to introduce to you today. And